Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Perspectal podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, in episode 3, we're talking about the ability to appreciate. Okay, so appreciation, I think, is an interesting topic, and I think it goes along with other words like gratitude, etc., etc., etc. I'm going to focus on the word appreciation today. And before I get too much into it, I am going to blurt out a dictionary definition to kind of give us a baseline, and so I don't get too off the rails and you have nothing to compare it to. So appreciation is a noun, and the first definition is the recognition and enjoyment of the good qualities of someone or something. And the second definition is a full understanding of the situation. So before I get into that, a little bit on the etymology, or kind of the history of the word appreciation. The roots come from kind of like the way that houses appreciate in value. Appreciation means to add value or to increase in value. If it appreciated, it increased in value. If I appreciate you, I'm kind of giving you value or I'm validating your value. So that's a little bit on the etymology of that. But on to the definition. The first definition, the recognition and enjoyment of the good qualities of someone or something. I think the main part that I take out of that is recognition. It's an act of doing something, of recognizing, of acknowledging, of making real, of manifesting, not just thinking it. It's an outward action. And then the second definition, a full understanding of the situation. This one I think is interesting, and I kind of take the two definitions and combine them a little bit into what we're going to talk about today. But the second definition, a full understanding of the situation, it kind of leads me to think that the word appreciation, which I thought about this before I looked up this definition, but this is kind of some confirmation bias stuff that's reinforcing the ideas that I had. You can't appreciate something unless you understand something. And the definition says a full understanding of the situation. So I would say, like, in order to actually appreciate, or in order to fully appreciate something, it's important first to fully understand it. Or maybe that's kind of the definition of it, to play a semantic game. You cannot fully appreciate something until you fully understand something. If you don't fully understand it, you do not have the ability to appreciate. And then back to definition number 1, just because you have the ability to appreciate something, just because you understand it, does not necessarily mean that you recognize what is happening. Like you outwardly say, hey, good job, or you see what's going on. Maybe you have the ability to understand a book, but you've never read it. And then the enjoyment part of it, I think that's part of the experience, like to have a good time in the experience of something, like somebody helps you out and it was really helpful, so you appreciate it. But I think, again, you have to actually understand that someone's helping you before you appreciate it. Someone helping you doesn't mean that you have the ability to appreciate them. You have to actually like kind of understand that they are helping you, know what they're doing, and then make that action to do the appreciation. So that's kind of the abstract of today, but I'm going to jump a little bit into kind of the discussion part where I explain in way more wordy detail. But like I was saying before, the idea of appreciation is rooted in the recognition and understanding of something, and this kind of leads to acknowledgement. And this means that if you have the ability to recognize or appreciate something, you have to know about it and also want to appreciate. And so I'm going to give a couple examples here that I think might kind of put some flesh on these bones. I think I made the scaffolding, and now it's time to add some muscle tissue. I'm going to build this body of a concept over here. And I'm going to go into 3 examples. One is playing sports, one is raising children, and one is suffering a loss. So in the first example, playing sports, I would say, and I think a good amount of people that have played sports at a reasonably high level can agree with me on this. And again, with the confirmation bias thing, because I'm talking to myself right now. But if you've gone through a serious athletic effort, whatever sport it is, rock climbing, tennis, marathon running, and you've pushed yourself and you've got injured and you've managed your injuries and you've played injured and you've gone through pain and you have done all these things in order to achieve the goal of playing your sport well. You have this experience, and you have this knowledge of this experience, this understanding of the struggle of pursuing excellence in exercise or in a sport. And because you've had this experience, because you have this knowledge, this understanding from your own exploits, when somebody else talks to you or levels with you, or you see someone else perform in their field, and it doesn't have to be, I played tennis, and so I can only watch another tennis player. If I've worked hard enough in tennis, I can watch someone else do martial arts. And because they're similar in the fact that they're physical kind of activities, it does give me some experience into what it took in order to perform a physical activity well. And on some level, I can understand and appreciate because I've gone through it, I've experienced it, and I understand. What I'm trying to get across here is that it's not important to have the exact same understanding or the exact same experience in order to be able to appreciate, but the closer you can get to the same experience, I think the deeper your appreciation can be. And then if you can have different experiences that help you to kind of put together the understanding needed for appreciating a certain thing, then it gives you a wider kind of ability to appreciate. And in a sports example would be kind of like, if I was a runner, if I was a marathon runner, and I was trying to appreciate a triathlete, I can appreciate them because I understand what it takes to run a marathon. A triathlon involves a marathon. And to push myself physically to have that one more step, and like quit 1,000 times and get back on the horse 1,000 times in the middle of the run, and the struggle that you go through in order to do something that requires a lot of time. Like a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's a big difference. And I can, to a certain extent, appreciate all the swimming they do and all the cycling they do, even though I'm not a swimmer or a cyclist. But because I've done that exercise in the marathon running, I have this ability to, or more of an ability than if I hadn't done any sports at all. I have this ability to appreciate and say, like, okay, I see that you struggled there. Okay, I can see that you're pushing through. Okay, I can respect that. I think a lot of this does have to do with respect. I think respect does come from mutual experience or mutual understanding. Appreciation, I think, has a lot of respect baked into it. It's like walnuts inside of brownies. Oh my gosh. But the more experience I get that is related to what I'm trying to appreciate, the better I can appreciate. So maybe if I'm a runner and then I also become a swimmer, I can understand the difference between those two things. And then also I can further understand having to swim and then get out of the water and immediately run a marathon. That's way different than running a marathon. And as you get different experiences that kind of triangulate around the thing you're trying to appreciate, it gives you a better and better, or a wider ability to appreciate. And then as you actually do the things or try to attempt to experience the same thing as the person or the thing you're trying to appreciate, you get a deeper and deeper understanding. And I think a wide understanding and a deep understanding are really good if you are trying to accurately appreciate something. So, on to the next example. Raising children. This is something I've never done ever, and I may do at one point, but I have not done yet. And there's a lot of things that go into raising children that are not, I guess, the things that would be on the job description if mother and father were like jobs you could fill out a resume for and apply for. And I think to people who have no child experience at all, that at times it can be difficult to appreciate or acknowledge or even just not pass judgment on some of the things that parents do because we've never been in that situation. And if you've done babysitting, if you were one of the older siblings in your house and maybe your parents worked a lot so you had to take care of your younger siblings, maybe even if like your parents are old and you have to start taking care of them, even though that's not like raising kids, you're still taking care of somebody. Maybe if you have some experience around caring for other people or supporting other people, it gives you kind of some understanding, some experience in that area, and like a better ability to appreciate people that are raising kids. And I say this kind of as a general term. This is not trying to be specific at all because there's a lot of different ways to raise kids, and I'm not saying one way is good or one way is bad. I'm talking about understanding and respecting someone's pursuit of a goal, and right now this example is raising kids. But like sometimes, like you may see a mom at a park do something to her kid, like yell at her kid. And if you've never raised kids before, this is like a totally hypothetical example. If you've never raised kids before, you might be like, man, what a terrible mom. I would never yell at my kids. But maybe if you had raised kids and you saw what the kid did, or you saw the look on the mom's face and you're like, oh, I've had that look before. I know she's going through something right now, or I know this kid has been doing this habitually or whatever. If you listen to the language and like you have an ability to kind of understand the situation, maybe you're like, wow, I know you just yelled at your kid in public and kind of disturbed the peace of the park, but you handled that pretty good. I might not have handled that as good if I would have had all those constraints on me at one time. And I think sometimes the ability to appreciate isn't necessarily like I have this godly power to respect people. It's just I have more knowledge of the situation. I can kind of sum up a more accurate situation. And because I know, okay, it's not just this, it's this, and this. Okay, with all of those things, I think that decision, it maybe wasn't the best, but I can see why you did that. I understand that. And okay, I can appreciate that you kept it going. You didn't have a meltdown and all this kind of stuff. So there's that where you can have all these different types of experience. Maybe even like managing a store because you are like in charge of other people. Maybe even having a leadership role gives you a better ability to appreciate, or having a pet may give you a better appreciation or ability to appreciate over raising kids. And I'm not trying to call kids pets or anything like that, but I'm saying you have care over something living. All of these things may not be exactly raising kids, but it may help you to kind of get a peep through the looking glass and find out something into the world of what that's about. And then even there's like the deeper levels where there's a big difference between raising one kid and raising two kids, and then raising two boys, or raising a boy and a girl, or raising two. There's all these different nuances that change the game a lot. And if you maybe only had boys, raising kids is fine, just do this and this and this, okay. But if you had boys and girls, it may have been a totally different ball game, and kind of into trying to, if you're trying to appreciate, then it's, I think, important to work on gaining as much of an understanding as you can, or realizing that there is some lack of understanding and maybe giving this person the benefit of the doubt because you might not be looking at the full situation. So on to the third example, which is suffering loss. And I really hope, I know there are people that have gone through this, but I hope that nobody has to go through this in order to understand and appreciate other people. I know that there are people who suffer losses, and this could be the loss of a loved one. They could be accused of something and lose their career. They can lose, like, during the Great Recession, a lot of people like lost all their properties. Like, so maybe you lose your business and that was your life's work or something like that. Maybe you lose your leg in an accident. And it changes you because you had your whole psyche, your whole world set up like this thing exists, and now it doesn't. And not only do you have to deal in the world without that as a support, but you also have to come up with a new game plan and figure out how to deal with the world without that as a support. And I think that there are cases where people who haven't suffered loss do not understand what somebody's going through when they suffer loss. They're like, oh yeah, you'll get over it, just give it time or something like that. And that could be totally insensitive and inaccurate and not appreciated at all by the person who's listening, because that's not where they're at right now. But if you had, maybe if you had gone through a loss, maybe you also lost a loved one, it kind of gives you an insight into, if this were like, a couple of years ago when I lost my grandma, I would not want someone telling me that. I'd want a hug. And then you give that person a hug and like, man, I feel appreciated. Thank you for the hug. And I think it kind of can help you gauge or get an ability to navigate situations, because your previous experience can help you empathize and understand where a person's coming from and seek to understand, rather than to just be like, hey, stiffen your chin up, or I don't really know that phrase, or it'll be all right, where you're kind of just telling somebody something. Instead, you're seeking to understand. And I think the more understanding you have, the more you seek to understand. And I think appreciation is kind of this method of acknowledging that you have enough understanding to attempt to understand what's happening. So like I've taken enough prerequisite classes that I belong in this class. I didn't just jump into calculus. I took all the math classes before, and now I'm trying to learn calculus. And then the person who is a calculus teacher is like, cool, I appreciate that you're learning calculus. How's that for a bonus fourth example? So basically, back to like kind of recap to the examples, until you've attempted to physically exert yourself to the extent that you're trying to appreciate, until you've like tried to become an Olympic athlete, like I don't think that you can accurately like be like, wow, that's amazing, or wow, that's a good job. You can still do that and not be wrong, but to like really truly appreciate and understand what they're going through, you have to get a taste of it. Until you've raised your own kids or done something similar or had similar experiences, you don't really walk down that road of being able to understand or appreciate what someone's going through when they're raising kids. And until you've suffered a comparable loss, which I hope you never do, I hope nobody has to go through loss, even though I know kind of we all do that. It's hard to appreciate and understand and see where other person's coming from and see what they're feeling and empathize. Yeah, I would say that the appreciation of another person or the appreciation of another thing has a lot to do with respect. And respect, it's very difficult to respect something when you lack the understanding of what went into making that thing. And so as kind of like a different type of example, I like to look at appreciation like the ability to see. So let's say there's a guy, his name is Blaine, and Blaine has achieved a lot. He's like an Olympic athlete and the father of 2 kids, and he's a single father because he lost his wife tragically. So he's all 3 examples. And I hope this never happens to anybody named Blaine. I'm just going to go on the record and say that, but this is part of the example. So he's like done all this achieving, and he's up on this this podium, like he won the Olympics, this like podium of greatness, and it's kind of high up. And in this example, seeing someone like with your eyes, the better you can see them, the more you appreciate them. Blaine did a lot of work to get up onto that podium for the Olympics. So he had to struggle and move and physically locate himself on that podium. And so other people that have not done that work are not as close to that podium. So we can think of somebody else named Anne, and then this is just a regular basic name that I made up. If Anne, maybe she hasn't done any Olympic work, she's not very exercise-friendly person. You could picture her as very far away from the podium, so it's very hard to see the podium. And so it's very hard to appreciate Blaine. Maybe she can see this little dot in the horizon, but she can't really make out the features and stuff, and it's kind of hard for her to make a full judgment of Blaine. And then there's this other person named Jim, and Jim isn't an Olympic athlete, but maybe he's a semi-pro, like an amateur Olympian or whatever. And he has some experience. He's had some struggles. He's had some injuries. So he's closer to the podium than Anne is, but he's not at the podium. So he has a better view of Blaine, so he can see Blaine a little better. He can appreciate Blaine a little better, but he can't fully appreciate Blaine because he's not on the podium and he's never been on the podium. So there's these three people. There's Anne, who really has no experience and can conceptualize Blaine and can hypothesize on Blaine, but really can't see Blaine that well at all. And I think for Anne, who I will call the novice, she has a lot to learn if she wants to, but I think what's good for Anne is to not pretend like she's Jim or Blaine, to not pretend like she knows what's going on and not pretend like she's an expert like Blaine. And be open to having Blaine or Jim maybe explain things to her. And I just realized that I put the only female in this argument as the person that's far away. That was totally by accident. So I'm going to move on. And so Jim is working a little bit on becoming an Olympian, and he can't see Blaine all the way. He can't respect Blaine for everything because he hasn't really been able to understand everything that that Blaine's gone through. But he is able to see some of the stuff. He's able to empathize. He's able to say, "Man, I've been through something that's kind of like that, and I'm so like amazed that you were able to get through. Because when I got to that, I gave up, or something like that." And he's like, "Wow, that's crazy." And Jim knows enough to know that he doesn't know a lot. It's like the Doppler effect, if you know what that is. And Anne doesn't know enough to know that she doesn't know a lot. So she may run this risk of thinking she's an expert. And so Jim, I think it's good for Jim to be humble and appreciate Blaine for what he is and not put himself too close to Blaine, and say that, hey, I could do the same thing because he did not do the same thing. And it's kind of degrading to Blaine for Jim to pretend that he's Blaine. And also to be humble and allow Blaine to kind of speak his truth and be understanding of that and try to, get some gems out of that. But lastly, to help Anne if she's willing and she wants to by giving her advice and teaching her and showing her the path and kind of guiding her along. And then there's Blaine, who did all this work and did all this sacrifice, and now he's at the top of this podium, and he's getting this possible appreciation from people. And I would say to Blaine, it's important from my perspective for Blaine to kind of remain humble and allow people to appreciate him, and also allow people like Jim to appreciate him, and then allow people like Anne to try to appreciate him, knowing that maybe they won't get it right because they're kind of far away, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're being degrading. And sometimes it can feel like that, where people ask you these things you would call a dumb question for whatever you're good at or whatever you've been through, and you're like, man, I can't believe this person said that to me or whatever. But if you think about it, like, man, if I had no experience in what I'm talking about, would I ask that question? Or if I had never heard of this, would I be thinking of the things that I'm thinking of right now? And sometimes you get so good at something that the stuff a novice would do doesn't make sense to you. And if somebody asks you novice questions, they seem like dumb questions, like, why would you ever do that? But you only know not to do that because you've been doing this for like 40 years or something like this your whole life. And for somebody that's like, it's not their whole life, for somebody who has little experience or a small ability to understand what you're going through, maybe they're trying to understand. And I think for the Blaines out there, it can be important to seek to understand the level that someone's at. I think for all of them, it's important to seek to understand the level. You can appreciate forwards and backwards and sideways and upways and backways and all that kind of stuff. But it's important for everyone to try their best to understand not only what they're seeing, but what level they're at when they're perceiving what they're seeing. so that they can not overstep or pretend they have a telescope, because in this example there's no telescopes. So that's basically the concept. There's a lot more stuff that I can go into about appreciation, and I'm trying to keep these down to like 20, 30 minutes per podcast, so I'm not going to do that. But ultimately, I'm bringing this up because in my mind it's a really interesting concept, and it can be very difficult when you think you're good at something, or when you are good at something, and then other people give you feedback or they want to talk about it, and they don't have the ability to talk about it on the level that you would like to talk about it, or they're asking you questions that maybe you would not ask yourself and stuff. And I think it's important sometimes for the people that are good at things to remember that not everybody is an expert at everything, and just because you've been working on cars your whole life and a screwdriver is like another finger on your hand doesn't mean that this person who's talking to you has ever touched a screwdriver, and it doesn't mean that you should judge them harshly or unfairly for that. And then on the reverse side, give the experts some slack, because maybe they haven't dealt with what the novice is going through in so long that they're totally removed from that experience, and they're kind of learning again, and they're kind of confused. It's like, why would you even associate with that's not associated with this? And they're being confused. They're not yelling at you. They're not being condescending. They're trying to understand, but maybe not in the kind of most humble way. So kind of seek to understand, seek to respect the other person, and I would say remember that at different parts of our lives, we're all three of these people at the same time. Everybody is Ann, everybody is Jim, and everybody is in Blake in different aspects of their life. And try to respect other people for where they're at, and try to respect yourself and not let other people put you down for where you're at. So yeah, this has been, I think this is episode 3 on the ability to appreciate. And thanks for listening. Please, if you have ideas about podcasts, I just got a good one from one of my friends that I'm going to do in a bit. Let me know. If you want to ask questions, I'm on Instagram at @JordanTremaine_. I'd love to talk to you guys about this stuff. But more than that, I want you to go out of your way to, if you think this is an interesting concept, talk to other people about it. Start conversations. Grow your mind and think about it. Don't just listen and be like, listen. Oh, yes, I definitely understand, which is a common thing that a lot of people do. I do that sometimes, even when I don't understand. I tell myself I understand because it makes me feel good to understand things, and it makes me feel bad to not understand things. So sometimes I just tell myself I understood so I can feel good, even though it's not true. I think when you have a conversation and when you're forced to think and forced to enunciate and forced to teach it, it kind of tests you on whether or not you do know it, and it forces you to incorporate it and bring it into other ideas and connect different parts of your brain. So please go do that. But yeah, this is episode 3 of Perspective, and I will see you guys later.